Okay, I think because we've got kind of a compressed schedule this week, so I'm going to start even a minute or two ahead of time, and if we have any stragglers behind, then of course they'll be joining us. That's Anthony at the back of the room, in case anyone wonders what's going on here. You probably recall from my earlier advertising that we've got a Skype call with the CEO of Cambridge IP, and that's going to come at 7 o'clock. So to make sure we kind of capture for posterity the richness of that discussion, we don't want to bug this guy with a phone call overseas every time we have questions about this. So I'm going to record it, and hopefully we'll be able to share and to disseminate with other courses elsewhere in QUT. So a quick rundown of where we're going to go with this class. First of all, I want to talk about the individual projects, try to get a quick feel from you as to how they're going, talk about any problems and anxieties that you are facing, and also to discuss any recurring themes that I've seen in the proposals. The one-pagers that you've sent me so far, by the way, thank you very much to those of you that have taken the time to do that. But looking at, from my point of view, what you think, what looks to you like a one-at-a-time kind of problem, I'm actually kind of seeing a lot of repetition in what people are stumbling on and what people are wrestling with. So I can tell you what those themes are and what my answers to them might be. Then we're going to kind of do things a little bit backwards today. We're going to do Chapter 9, then Chapter 8, because of course Chapter 9 is about intellectual property and protecting innovation. So we'll kind of get our minds going in that frame, and that tees up very elegantly the 7 o'clock appointment we have with Ilyan Ilyev in the UK. And then we'll wrap things up with Chapter 8 on the tail end, looking at different modes of collaboration. We've got 3 interesting case studies here: the Protecting Innovation, IBM and the Attack of the Clones, and the XenoMouse. I look forward to talking about those. And as usual, we're going to make sure that we've got 30 minutes at the end of the class devoted to letting you guys kind of bash away on your team assignment. And the great news here, of course, is that this is number 4 of 4. This is it. This is the final one that we're issuing tonight. So here's the little pop culture takeaway point. By the end of this class, having explored the topic of intellectual property and how digital types of media are changing the landscape of IP, we're going to be able to go home and explain to our friends and family why Stephen King has this unfinished novel still sitting in his typewriter in Bangor, Maine. That's where he lives, and a lot of his plot lines are kind of centered around that small town in Maine. There's this novel called The Plant. He didn't finish it. And there's some compelling reasons with regards to intellectual property as to why that is. And we'll know by the end of this lecture. So let's talk about, before we dive into Chapter 9, let's talk about the projects. So before I cut you guys loose and we talk about what your concerns and anxieties are, I thought maybe if I pulled out one of the exemplars that I put on Blackboard for you guys, if I talked through it and explained why I thought this was a strong model of what to do, maybe lights would go on in some people's heads. So here it is. This is People's Exhibit A right here. I have removed the name of the student, which is a shame because it's a great piece of work and you'd like to heap accolades on people who deserve it, but just to kind of make things easier, that person is anonymous. Here's the premise that person put forward. She said, so now we've eliminated half of the gender pool right there, so we know it's a woman. She said, okay, I've got this medical technology. There's some technology out there that I won't bore you with the specifics because it doesn't really matter. But there's a technology out there, and there's this one question that I think that we would need to answer for this to be able to be really successful. And so she spends about a page, just a page, telling me, here's what the technology is. More than a page would be probably too much, and much less than a page would probably be a little too little. But a page, it felt about right. Here's the technology. And then on page 2, there's a very brief highlighting of, okay, great technology, but that there's still this question. And until this question gets answered, we probably won't be able to to use it as completely and as fully as we would like. So here she kind of tees up the question and says, here that is. And then moving on to page 3, it says, well, as luck would have it, there's this handy theoretical analytical framework that I can use. This one happened not to be from the textbook, but I suspect that many of you will be able to grab onto low-hanging fruit from the textbook's framework. And basically, she grabbed this framework and said, this is something that I can use as kind of a way to organize my thinking that will help me answer this question. And then she proceeded in the next 2 or 3 pages and said, here's what I know about this industry that helps me kind of fill in the gaps in this framework. And then I can kind of have a more complete understanding of here's what's going on in this industry. And this is the job of an analytical framework, is when you populate those things, you stick information in there, and it doesn't have to be nitty-gritty information. It can be fairly high-level qualitative stuff, whatever you can get your hands on. Push it through the analytical framework, and then it spits out an answer. And then she says towards the end, when you kind of wrap it up and look at all in its totality, look at the evidence and push it through the analytical framework, this is a recommendation that makes sense. Ta-da! Wraps it up. She made it to page, she's rolling the credits. Reference the section is on page 8. It was fantastic. Great. And it was that easy. It's that simple. And one of the things I'm seeing in the one-pagers is that people are trying to come up with the grand unified theory here. They're going too far and are probably pursuing too many questions all at once. So one, maybe as many as 2 questions, that ought to do it. That's as much as you're going to have time and space for here. So with that said, and now we've got the one-pagers done. By the way, we've already had somebody submit an entire complete assessment number 2. They had their own reasons why that was necessary in their calendars, but that's how eminently doable this is. Someone's already done it. Looks pretty good. I haven't marked it yet, but just to kind of give it a quick skim, looks fine. So one of you's done it. So proof positive that this is possible. We've talked through an exemplar of what I think is kind of best in class, and we've done the one-pagers. What questions are there on your mind still at this point? And if you think that we're on track collectively and individually, that's fine too. If there's no problems at this point, we can continue to do this by email and telephone and whatever. But is there any high-level stuff that we want to address at this point? No? I'll leave it there? Great. Chapter 9, Protecting Innovation. I'm going to start with this video vignette about MP3 files. Basically gives you kind of a real quick summary as to what are MP3s about.
There was a time when our Earth was populated by huge sound files. Music was everywhere. And before we knew it, we wanted to listen to music anytime and anywhere we'd go. That was the point when things got problematic. Apparently, everyone got used to it somehow. Everyone except a small team of scientists at the Fraunhofer IIS. The MP3 was born. An audio format 10 times smaller than the one on CD, with the same quality level. So small that one single MP3 player can hold up to 30,000 songs. And that's good, because there is a total amount of 1.2 trillion MP3 files on Earth. And there is yet more to come.
So that gives us the skinny on what the technology is about. Whoops. But what it doesn't really explain is how the market responded once the genie was out of the bottle, if you will. So this vignette, this is kind of a retrospective. So this kind of is a look back on how this situation looked at the time. And you can see there's a timestamp on the bottom of this thing of 2003. So it's probably hard for most of us because of the ubiquity and how common these technologies are now. But let's kind of cast our mind back to a time when that wasn't quite as true. And it was like an inflection point, this hockey stick kink in the curve where the music world, the digital media world was never going to look the same. And at that exciting moment of change, this is how the world looked.
It was 8 years ago tomorrow that Apple's iPod went on the market, and it forever changed the way the world buys and listens to music.
Hard to believe it was 8 years ago. iPods eventually evolved into video players. Now, from this morning's ABC News vault, iPod milestones from the last few years.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at the future of the recording industry because we are told that more than 2.6 billion songs are downloaded over the internet every month. At least that's what the Recording Industry Association of America says, and very often we all know people do not pay for them. Today the industry said it will sue people who obtain music without paying it, which is not so easy. This is not intended as a how-to report, but if you are less than familiar with what is going on out there, listen to ABC's Robert Krulwich.
You've heard about this. You go on the internet, you look up any song you want to hear. I mean, anything by anybody.
Mambo, mambo Italiano.
From Rosemary Clooney to Eminem. Almost every song ever made, even, Punjabi MC. Then with one click, you can download that song right onto your own CD. So now you've got your favorite music for free.
It's not exactly legal, but it's so easy, why bother to pay the music store? Which may explain, if current rates continue, why CD sales have dropped almost 1/4 in just 3 years. That's an awful lot of lost business.
And yet, there are a few record stores that still manage to attract lots and lots of customers, like this one, Amoeba in San Francisco. Because these stores attract older collectors who want original CDs, music that you can hold in your hands.
Talking about my generation.
Younger customers, by contrast, are perfectly happy to get their music through a computer or these little handheld things called iPods. They do not prize the package and the cover art. They just download, listen, and when they're bored, they delete.
Even the jeans she's wearing, I'm hooked and I can't stop staring. No, baby.
Which may account for the apparent success of a new online music store from Apple Computer called iTunes. It sells single songs for 99 cents each. So you pay, Apple sends the tune directly to your computer, and it's all legal. In the first 2 months, Apple sold more than 5 million songs. 5 million. A number that's so surprising, music stores are thinking this could be a turning point. Because if iTunes hits big, and soon music is mostly not in a package and not on a shelf, will people lose the habit of going to stores?
I don't know. After 5, 10, 15 years, I'm not sure.
Nobody's sure. Even the most successful music stores are wondering, can they survive this?
Well, we know, knowing what we know now, that the answer is, yeah, it's kind of dicey. The future wasn't looking so good for them, but we know that there were some interesting turns in the road along the way. Let's go back to, the case study. Let's talk about the technology. MP3, what is it? It's coding. It's an algorithm, basically, right? So there's no physical manifestation of it. You can't put your arms around it. You can't put it on your pillow when you go to sleep. It's an algorithm. What did it allow us to do? You caught that on the first little vignette? Shrink, right, compress. A little bit, profoundly compress to 1/10. Surely that this means, of course, that it's going to absolutely reduce to some horrible audio quality that we can barely put up with, like it's going to sound like a couple of tin cans joined by a piece of string, right? With 90% of the data eliminated, how was the quality? Almost indistinguishable from the real McCoy. This is literally having your cake and eating it too. 90% reduction in the amount of data that you had to store, and an almost indistinguishable quality in the, with the audio. This is magic, right? This is an incredible development. There's no going back after this gets out. So there's a couple of interesting decision points that we need to talk about here. So the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, leave it to the clever Germans to come up with something incredible like this. They have a choice to make. What was their first choice? The big one about what to do next. They've got a technology, now what? Protect it, hug it dearly, let no one else near it, or do what? Or give it away or start letting out to other people. Let's do a quick run through of what the pluses and minuses of each might have been. What were the pluses of maybe hanging on to it themselves?
Make money.
Right, there's all the money will be mine, right? Control over the creative direction of it and how it's going to evolve. But they also, in their mental calculations, they knew that there was going to be some dire consequences if they went down that path. What were those? There was competition, and that may well have been an MP3 file. What a great prop from the audience. Fabulous.
Isn't there network externalities as well? Like it's not worth it.
Absolutely. That's great. We're starting to dredge up stuff from the previous lectures. You're absolutely right. So let's expand on that. What was the dynamic that was going to bring about those network externalities? Right, MP3. So basically letting it out to lots of different people and licensing it and letting lots of manufacturers out there and lots of different coders and whatever, that was going to proliferate this and get it out there so that it became this 800-pound gorilla in the industry. They knew that they had to get that first mover advantage or very quickly get out there so that they could get a strong footing, a solid footing for this technology. Why was time of the essence? Why was it important that they didn't dawdle on this one? Little competitors, little mom and pop shops, big ones. Sony, who else? Microsoft. These are not trivial companies to be cast aside lightly. If they didn't hustle, they were going to have the Microsofts and the Sonys, who probably had fantastically gifted engineering teams of their own. They were going to be brought to bear on a similar types of problem, come at it from a slightly different angle, avoid all the IP morass, and they were going to basically, steal it out from under them. Can't let that happen, so they had to hustle. So licensing looked pretty good. So, and then something happens. What happened next was a little bit of technology, but it was also kind of a market dynamic. There was so many of these stories start with frustrated young people in university dorms who are just bashing away at code. What's the particulars of this story? Napster. What was this gentleman's name? Sean Fanning, played by whom in the movie Justin Timberlake and The Social Network? But so Justin Timberlake's character in The Social Network, that's that guy, okay? And so he's got a bit of a footprint in the Facebook story. That's why he's in that movie. But this is where he really got his start, okay? So tell me about this Napster thing that Sean Fanning creates in his dorm room at some crazy hour in the middle of the night. Peer-to-peer sharing. Can you describe for us what that's about?
Or you just get a client. If someone else has a client, you say, these are the files that I want to share, and the person with the client can see those files.
Okay.
Take those files.
The one important dynamic in this that I want to point to, by the way, is at any time is Sean Fanning or his stuff, does it actually have the song at any point? No. You're just building a pipe to connect you to you and you to you. But you're just like an honest broker, and you're not actually, or dishonest broker in this case maybe, but you're not actually splashing around in the music yourself. That's not your business. You're just creating this network, right?
And even then, you're not connecting the whole file to someone who's grabbing a chunk from him, a chunk from this person, and you're only swapping the chunks.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, and I don't think it's here. Can you?
Napster wasn't. Napster was the thing of BitTorrent.
Yeah, it was the whole file.
Back then it was, yeah.
Okay. So you're kind of like selectively grabbing little parts of the song? Is that a subversive attempt to not be found putting a song together? Oh, that's clever.
And it's also making it faster.
Interesting. Okay.
You download smaller parts at different points in time. That's why if you look at your
No, but you've heard other people do. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
One problem with Napster, I understand, was that the person you were downloading a song from is connected to their existing stuff, because I think it's not.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. For those of us who joined a little bit late, we've got printouts of the slides that Ilyan Ilyev will be using when we're connected to him via Skype. Does anyone need a copy? No problem. Anyone else? Here, I'm just gonna, can you shoot it back? Kinda. Anyone else? And one back there. Take a couple. Okay. So, where we are on our storyline here. Right, so Napster has arrived. We've agreed that the actual song doesn't reside on Sean Fanning's computer or anything of his stuff. He just creates this conduit. Now, the music industry starts going into a real lather about this. Of course they do. Why, what's happening? What's on their mind? Why are they getting crazy? It's not just that they're losing money instantly, it's that they see the trend. I mean, what did that guy say? Within 3 years, 25% of their sales had been deep sixed. That's profound. Of course, when they see their multi-billion-dollar empire slipping away fast, and they barely know what to do about it. So they're starting to get a little panicky. So Napster puts forward, it's obvious that there's some tension, there's like threats of lawsuits. Napster puts forward an olive branch and says, I think I see a way out of this. What was the form of the olive branch? They offered a paid subscription model to that pan-industry consortium. What was the zippy acronym that they had for themselves? RIAA. And Napster said, look, here's the deal. You would continue to make money if we went for this. And I would continue to, and Napster would continue to be like the broker, but the industry would still get paid. And what do the music types do? No, they didn't. Now there was kind of two schools of thought on this one. Basically, it was some people thought, well, wait a minute, this technology, the genie is out of the bottle. We cannot stuff the toothpaste back in the tube. Insert your favorite analogy here. But the bottom line was, like, they thought there's no going back on this. And any attempts to suppress this just with the legal stuff is probably doomed to fail. So the best thing we can do now is try to figure out how we can actually kind of continue to wring money out of this, because this is the new normal. But there was another school of thought that I thought was pretty interesting. This quote from The Economist. I'm going to quote directly here. Phonographs were going to kill sheet music. The rise of radio threatened to undermine sales of phonographic discs. Video recorders were going to wipe out the film industry, and cassette recorders spelt doom for the music business. In each case, their fears proved unfounded. The new technologies expanded the markets in unprecedented ways. So, this is interesting. Have we seen in this new era, and this is a bit of a departure here, I'll come back to that. Have we seen any evidence in the marketplace that new models are popping up for music types to continue to get paid, but they get paid differently? How are music people making the big money now? Do they make it all on the CDs like they used to? What's that?
Track by track.
Track by track. There's the music. What else?
Subscriptions, like I pay $10 a month and get whatever.
Right. How about concerts? They're making a bigger chunk of the pie in revenue on concerts than they used to. I'm a big fan of Nickelback. It's like junk food of the musical variety of junk food. They're from Canada, so that's kind of a natural affiliation there. Got to root for the home team. That said, I have been disgusted with every Nickelback concert I've ever gone to, where they, in between almost every song, it's kind of like, okay, remember to go to the lobby and buy a t-shirt. It's kind of, okay, we get it, you're trying to make money. Don't worry, we know where the shirts are, but they constantly remind you, get out there and buy our merchandise. Merchandising, concerts, this is big, big money. And so one of the new, the changes in the model for these music folks is that MP3s are kind of almost like a freebie. It's kind of like, all right, we know people are out there ripping off our music, and sometimes we can do something about it, and sometimes we can't. But they're using it almost as like a marketing thing. This will hopefully get you so excited about this music that you want to come to our concert and buy our stupid shirt. And that's how they get paid, even in spite of the fact that people still successfully rip off their music. They still make tons of money because they've just kind of moved things around a little bit and they make their money on a different part of the experience. Any other things to add on that? Yeah?
Just a friend of mine went through this roller coaster because he started a single record shop that grew into Sandy Records.
Into what? Saturday? Okay.
Sandy Records.
Sandy Records, okay.
Yeah, and then ultimately Sandy bought all the other record companies that were around, probably the shops, Virgin, etc. But when this started coming in, they then, for a time, went to a single track, and you could download that in the stores.
Yep.
As they started said, but in the end, he got out of it. He sold the whole lot out, but not as much as it was probably worth. And now he's doing retailing and other things.
Okay.
But it really mucked that business around and continues to do so.
Interesting. Any other input on that?
I used to always think that, when this was all happening, you'd walk past these stores and think, why would you invest in, why would you open a new one? Because then they see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, we've been through 2 format wars already, you just thought this is the next one.
Yeah. And I felt that way about DVD rental stores too, and even, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'll just say those machines, like the vending machines at the
yeah.
shops. That's all I see now.
There's still a Blockbuster for some reason on Brunswick Street.
Oh, is it?
Prime property. I have no idea.
I can't explain that either. I mean, I don't go. So I'm just gonna scooch along. Like I said, we got the clock working against us this time, so I'm going to be a little more mercenary with the timekeeping here. This is a real humdinger of a quote here. So they've got this, they've got this problem. And then all of the big music houses, BMG, EMI, Real Networks, and Sony, they all created their different brands of, this was their delivery mechanism in the new digital world. Now, the bottom line, the punchline is it didn't work, right? It just didn't work. And then who rides in on a white horse to save the day? Steve Jobs. I love this. The RIAA needed a savior. Steve Jobs offered to be that guy. Well, how nice is that, right? So what is the solution that the infinitely kind and, this guy's obviously doing it for the greater good and the benefit of mankind. What does Steve Jobs bring to the party? What does he do? The iTunes store. What else? The iPod, right. So what is the deal that he winds up cutting with all of these different music houses? They get their 27, what was it? No, he gets 27, they get the 99 cents minus 27. And so they're liking that, because what was their alternative if they kept going down the slippery slope? Exactly. I can't whistle, but if I could, I would have made that noise. And you're right. So it was like, devil deep blue sea. I can make the, 3/4, give or take, of $1, or I can get the absolute zero. So I'm listening. What do you mean by that?
Well, the formats he introduced, some formats that actually control how far the music could spread. So it's track by track, then it could only move.
Right. How far? What was that ripple? How big was the ripple? 5 devices, right. And then it just had a locking technology and it would stop it. It was like a boot on your car. It just couldn't go any further, right?
The frustrating thing with Apple is you can't pull your old song off your phone and put it back on your computer. So you couldn't actually download back off a device.
Yeah. So obviously there's some things that that frustrated people on the consumer side. But I guess given the overwhelming number of people that are actually signing on and buying this stuff, obviously the pluses seem to be outweighing the minuses, at least in the consumer mindset, right?
Until I read that case study this afternoon, I always thought that was Apple driving that locking. It sounded to me like RIAA or whatever were also part of the...
I think he developed the technology actually to appeal to the wider market, so we could actually get them on board. Or not he, but that was the position.
He made it a bit easier than the other guys.
Okay.
It worked.
Okay.
Sony's very locked down.
It's also their particular label as well, so who wants to have 5 different ways of getting music for 5 different labels? So I think you gave them the ecosystem, the channel,
Yes.
to get out something
So
for a big
that's
audience. And
Apple's a hardware company, so they need iTunes. They need iTunes to sell more computers. So
Yep.
That's why they need to get through the computer, so that people buy an iPod, they'll eventually buy
Well, the RIAA were a bit scared of giving too much control to one of the big record labels.
Okay.
So they preferred to go with a new player.
Right. Yes, I think that's true. And also, there's also a network effect, the externality effect working for us there too. Because what's more enticing to me as John or Jane Q Public? Do I want to, I mean, okay, who's your favorite artist? Who's your favorite music person? Pick one. The Wiggles. Okay, Bryan Adams. The Wiggles are a Disney thing. I think that's that's a secret that everybody knows. I have 3 small boys, so I'm getting an earful of the Wiggles. I assure you of this. So Bryan Adams. Who like Bryan Adams? Thanks. Wow. That and the MP3 prop. You're going to do well on this course. So, right, Bryan Adams. What label is he signed on? That's the thing. Most of us don't know. You know, whoever you like out there, you don't intuitively know who is their stable keeper. You just don't know the answer to that. So if you wanted to know, I like Bryan Adams, if there was these 5 supermarkets for music, all of them having only their thing, which one do you go to? You literally have to go through all 5 and go, it's got to be here somewhere. What a nuisance. Nobody wants this. So the alternative that Apple put in front of us, one-stop shopping? What's this? I can get any artist I want all in this one place? That's magic. From a consumer point of view, now we are cooking with gas. This is incredible, right? There's a couple of great questions that come out of this. I like the second part of question 1 here. Which stakeholders stand to benefit the most or the least from this revolution? Who's really winning big with the MP3 revolution? Consumers. Well, Apple's making a killing no matter what, it seems, but you're right. I think the big winner is the consumer. Why is that? What's that?
product size and they can choose whichever they want.
Yep.
They don't have to pay for the whole thing and they don't like what.
Absolutely. It allows the consumer to decouple, to unbundle, if you will. You can. How many of us were buying albums where you literally didn't care about 3/4 of the album, right? And then there was a couple of songs, and you're always beholden to buying the entire thing for those 2 or 3 songs. That is gone. I mean, how liberating is this? This is fantastic. So the consumer's winning big because instantly we've been able to vaporize that 3/4 of the album that we never wanted to buy. Fabulous. I can mix, I can match. And it's in the 99 cent per song model is incredible. Who else is? Let's go kind of fast forward here to number 3. This concept of the Creative Commons. Why would some musicians gladly sign on the Creative Commons? What was the essence of Creative Commons, by the way?
Yeah, publicize our own music.
I'm sorry?
Publicize our own music.
Right, you get it out there basically, right? And it's kind of like and what does it cost to take stuff from there? Nothing, it's gratis, it's free. Oh, who wins on that one? I'm sorry? The art. What kind of artist? How did Bryan Adams do on that one? Probably not so well. He doesn't want his stuff out there for free. But who does want stuff out there for free? Upcoming. Hey, can we think, while we're on the topic, while we're on this Canadian diatribe, can we think of another Canadian artist? Well, that's fantastic, and I'm flattered. But there's one artist that only exists because literally they got discovered on YouTube.
Bieber?
Justin Bieber.
Well, that's how Carly Rae got discovered, by Justin Bieber.
I don't even know who that second one is. Oh, okay. Oh, is that right? That Call Me Baby thing. I had no idea.
Picked her up because she's Canadian, and he watched her things.
I know, exactly. All right. So I'm probably, I'm not a big fan of Justin Bieber, but I did cotton on to the fact that this guy got his career started because he had this huge fan base following a freebie video he uploaded to YouTube. And absent that technology, he would probably, be working the night shift at a car wash or something. I mean, who knows where he'd be, right? I mean, I don't know. So anyway, that's also one community who's gained huge on that. So we're kind of turning the corner towards the top of the hour there. So I'm gonna leave that. Is there anything else that we want to talk about with regards to that case study before we move on? Yeah.
Dilution of social trends. So I think before this, all this freely and easily available music, you kind of get a big surge or a trend in a particular artist or a type of music. Think grunge in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it was kind of this big bang, and then everyone would be focused on that. Whereas now it seems as though there's much less, you've got to be on this bandwagon at the moment. It's spread a lot.
It's more democratic.
Flatter bell curve.
Yeah. It's the Amazon versus Barnes & Noble thing we talked about. More people are being caught up in the tails that simply weren't available before. So it's like this great leveling of the music demand curve. I like that. That's a very interesting analogy. Yeah. More, but there's more, crowd input into what we like and what we listen to. We're not being force-fed quite like we were, right? Anything else? Great, good. So, team assignment 4. I've printed out a copy. Anybody want a printed copy, or is this not something? Yeah. Okay. Great. Anybody else? I'll leave them. I'll just have them right here in case that's handy, because sometimes people like to kind of hum and haw over the paper version at the 30-minute thing at the end. Okay, what I want to drive home with this slide here. Let's talk a bit about Adobe. Adobe is famous for a product called PDF, right? And if you're like me, you didn't know what PDF meant for most of the time you've been using this thing, even though we use them about 3 or 4 times a day, all of us. Portable document format. Now, they have an interesting IP model that's worth talking about here. What parts of the Adobe offering do we have to pay for versus not pay for? What's the free part? Reader. Everybody and their dog is entitled to a free copy of Reader. Why would they do that? Network externality, right? You're probably bursting to say it again, but you didn't want to be the network externality guy. Well, you're right. That's okay. But he's been very good about coming up with that one. That's all I'm saying. So the thing is, so there you go, is that you can have a copy, and you can have a copy, and you can have a copy, and Adobe couldn't be happier about the fact that you are taking that free copy, because it means you are contributing to their network externality. And they love that. That the number of customers out there, this web, this network gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's fantastic. So what's the part that you have to pay for then? How do they make their money? Right, to write, exactly. So now that we've got all these customers that have the ability to read those documents, you make your money on the ability to write to that format. What does PDF have going for it, by the way? There's a couple advantages. Why would you use a PDF over, for example, Word? You can't edit, although there are chinks in that armor now. I have software where you can edit and everything. So but you're right, in principle, it's less editable. Looks the same. How many times have you had to send a document to North America? 8.5 by 11 over there, A4 over here. Almost the same, but not quite. And when you're using MS Word, your pages, the formatting, it's a little out of whack. You put that thing in PDF, you can sleep well that night, because you know how you sent it is how it's going to look to them. And you can't do that with every format, and that's pretty good.
You can't copy and paste from it, so it's not as stealable content.
Actually, now you can, but you're right, you couldn't before. So in the early days, you couldn't. Sorry?
You can password protect it.
Okay, so yes, in the absence of a password protected, yes, you're absolutely right. Anything else?
It's got character encoding and stuff like that. It doesn't have character encoding, which is why sometimes if you look at things on an iPad, and it's like some letters will have looks like jibber jabber, but it's just that the character encoding is.
Yeah, looks like Klingon or something, or yeah. So you're absolutely. Okay, and let's talk size too. I'm stupefied sometimes. You'll get like a file where the source file that you distilled to make the PDF is much, much larger than the PDF. And I just sat there scratching my head sometimes thinking, how did they do that? How do you shrink it down to a file that small and still have the fidelity of the image. And I honestly can't explain that. So it's magic, but there it is, it works. It's pretty incredible stuff. So the big takeaway that I want to point out here is that I think that on an instinctive level, very often, it's easy to kind of think, oh, IP equals lock everything down. IP equals protect everything at all costs because, you know, that's the name of that game. IP can be more subtle and nuanced and shades of gray than that because sometimes it is very astute and something you should encourage to run around giving stuff away for free. There is a time and a place where that is entirely what the doctor ordered. And then there's another time where it's just not. So I just wanted to kind of disabuse everybody of this idea that, you know, the right answer for IP is to cleverly lock everything down every time. It isn't. And Adobe PDF is a shining example of that. Is there any other PDF, go ahead, take one kid for free kind of offering out there that you can think of?
All the schools, for example, I industry with tech, manufacturers will give schools below cost tech equipment if they want kids to grow up using it. So when they get to a certain age, they go, oh, I'm going to get Dell PC, for example.
I get mailed textbooks from publishers. There's like one every 2 weeks in my mail slot. If I go away on vacation, they will clog a mail slot with textbooks. Why? Because if they make me believe it's a good textbook and they send it to me for free, guess who has to soak that cost up? Bad news, you guys, right? So there's one of those, give some away for free and make others pay for them. So yeah, there's any other examples before I move? Okay. Smart.
Applications give away readers for free now, even visual readers are also.
Okay, and again, that's nakedly all about network externalities. Because if everyone can open the file, then you're never going to have a customer go, I'm not buying this because when I ship it to that guy, he cannot open the file. You don't want to have that because they'll never go back to you, right? Yeah.
JPEG's a notorious example.
Great.
So they're letting everyone use it. And
Yep.
in fact, they're standard. And then they step forward and they say, okay, money please, guys. So they sort of trap people to using it almost.
Okay. McAfee, the virus software, yeah. And I don't know the specifics of that. So it was kind of a freebie at first, and then they jumped up and started asking for money when you liked it? Okay, right. So here's some other approaches to dealing with IP. I don't know if there's any fans of Radiohead out there. To be honest, I'm not. Probably because they're not Canadian. I don't know. And they literally, so they tried something with this album of theirs called In Rainbows. And basically they just said, and this is like, I've been to restaurants that did this, pay what you think it's worth. And I don't recall reading any kind of reviews as to whether or not Radiohead was happy with that decision, looking in the rearview mirror. But they did do it. Literally, they just asked their fans on the internet, look, take it. Give us what you think this is worth. And that's, you know, no matter what we might think about it, it did happen. So that brings us to the Stephen King novel, The Plant. So here's what he did. Basically, he said, to all my fans, I'm going to basically put this out there. I will release it one chapter at a time. I want you to pay $1 per chapter, and the total cost for the book, I promise you, no matter how long this thing goes on, you're never going to have to pay more than $13 in total. This is an honor system. Basically, it's, you know, pay the dollar, don't pay the dollar. No policeman is going to knock on your door. This is completely up to you. But if I see that the fraction of paying customers divided by the total number of downloads, if that number falls below 75%, this project is over. And this thing is just going to languish in the dustbin of history or sit in his metaphorical typewriter half finished. And unfortunately, Mr. King put a little too much faith in humanity, it seems, because while the fraction of the users eventually was quite strong, it did eventually fall below 75%, and true to his word, let's face it, at this point in his career, he didn't need the money. He's independently wealthy anyway. There's only a house so big that you can buy in Bangor, Maine. He probably owns a few of them. And he said, look, that's it. I told you I was going to stop, and I am. So there is an unfinished Stephen King novel out there called The Plant. It's never going to get finished, and that's why. Well, was it a bad book, or was it just that he overestimated people's ability to be honest?
The second half of it is incredible.
Too many rules. Really? Unfinished by you? You mean because you don't finish reading them? Oh, he doesn't? Oh, I see. Right. And then they all died. Yeah. Well, I'm an engineer by training and discipline, so almost by definition that means I probably don't read as much fictional stuff as I should, and I'm the last guy you want to ask for literary criticism. So I couldn't say yay or nay to that one. Let's talk about this. The whole IP landscape here, it's not just one option. And they kind of articulate these options in the text reasonably well, so I'm not going to belabor them too much or too hard. But I do want to kind of make sure that we take note of this figure that's in the textbook. On one end of the spectrum, we've got something that is wholly proprietary. It is absolutely mine. I'm not sharing it with anybody. And then on the other end, you've got this completely open, free for the people, let them all have it. And then there's this, and they make it look like it's just three options, but I'm sure there's even more shades of gray interstitially nestled away in between each of those. But we got limited licensing, we've got moderate licensing, we've got liberal licensing. So there's kind of like the sliding scale that we can choose from. By the way, I personally think that this is one of the topics that's lower hanging fruit for the individual, for assessment item number 2, for the individual research project. I think that this is a very promising question for some industries and some of your circumstances. You may have a new technology where you're kind of asking the question, what's the right answer here? Is it the Adobe PDF, free sometimes but not for others? Is it kind of completely wide open, or is it completely locked down? What's the right answer for this new technology that you're dealing with in your organization? I think that's a great question. And maybe some of you are kind of thinking to yourself, yeah, that is kind of a good question for my technology. I would encourage you to get a look in that case. So let's talk about the advantages of protecting a particular technology. There's the money side with it's mine, and obviously every sale that happens under that situation is yours. And we talked about your right to control the destiny of the technology. Can we think of a company that was very adamant about locking down technology? And one of their big points is because they want to control the evolution. Who's kind of like the standard bearer on that one these days? I was thinking of Apple, actually, is that they have this freak control, this control freak, this focus on we are going to be masters of our own destiny on this stuff. And so they have a very tight control over the IP. If you look, and this is something I think that Ilian is going to bring up in his talk, if you look at patent statistics, Apple is very aggressive on this stuff. They hunt down violators and ruthlessly beat them. They have a lot of lawyers working on this stuff. So the advantages of diffusion, well, we've already kind of touched on those too. May accrue more rapid adoptions if produced and promoted by multiple firms. And there's also this technology might be improved by other firms. And there's this little story about the IBM versus Microsoft we talked about this in a previous lecture too, but it seems to pop up here. Let's talk about IBM. So this is the part that we have talked about before. I told you before that IBM got a little bit panicky because they saw that what they thought was in its infant days, they thought that the personal computer market, who's going to need those, right? And so they just kind of passed over that whole option in the market. And then they realized, and it says here that when it passed the $1 billion mark, IBM tapped the brake pedal and said, we may have made a mistake here. Let's go back and consider making a PC. And then they made that fateful decision where they said, hey, let's let the operating system be made by this little startup no one's ever heard of called Microsoft. And in the interest of expediency and getting things on track, even though we have a very well put together team of professionals who are very good at designing microprocessors. It doesn't give us what we need right now, so let's buy it from an outside supplier called Intel, right? What did they think was going to save their bacon with regards to IP? What did they think was the miracle that could not be reproduced? The BIOS. And for us non-IT folks, can you walk us through what that is? No. Anyone take a stab? This is a threat. I will just read from the text. Okay. Yeah.
Basically, what happens is what it is it bootstraps your computer. It's the first thing that runs the computer. You turn it on.
Yep.
From there, you then load up the peripherals.
It's the handshaking that goes between the software and the hardware, basically. Am I oversimplifying that for our IT buddies here?
And it's built, the other critical thing, it's built onto the processor. It's independent of hard drives and so forth.
Okay, so it's kind of it's latent. It's kind of within the hardware stuff. It's like the part of the program that's kind of built in, and everything else kind of gets layered on top. So it's right. It's this like the soul of the machine, I guess. And IBM was very confident that nobody is going to be able to get around our BIOS for this stuff. But that's not how that played out. What did who got around that pretty quickly? Compaq. How long did it take them to do it? Only a few months. And what was their strategy? I thought this was pretty clever. They reversed engineered, but they also, so they looked at so IBM, they had locked down, all they could protect was the code, the actual transcription code, line by line. You know, no one was allowed to verbatim reproduce the code. And they thought, our work here is done. But what did Compaq do? The functionality. Exactly. They called them their virgin coders, virgin programmers. People that had never, that they could prove, had never had any direct access to seeing what the code was for the IBM BIOS. And therefore, they could look a judge in a courtroom in the eye and say, this virgin programmer, we reverse engineered purely based on the functionality with this person has never seen, and we can prove it, any of that IBM BIOS. And that because they could prove that, they reproduced the functionality, and that's how they got to do this. So IBM was thwarted. They didn't realize that they had let the cat out of the bag, that they were unleashing this maelstrom, this whole, you know, this industries that made computers that were compatible with what theirs could do. They didn't know that that was going to happen. It just kind of happened that way. Yeah.
So isn't that the thing then, that if you're being protectionist, you put the big walls up, and then if the invaders make their way inside the walls and they rape and pillage you, whereas, you know, maybe open source is a little bit more like America trying to invade Vietnam, where there was classes of walls to get in, which is people everywhere, but they, you know,
Yeah.
more dispersed.
Okay. Interesting military analogy. I don't know. Very emotive. I can't speak to the military parts of it, but the parts about the technology, yes, that's interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're hiding behind this perceived wall. And I think that you had Xbox up there before.
Yeah.
And I remember Xbox is a really good example of like that the hackers got into that, and people were using it to download movies and games, and they had all their games stored on there, and they were all pirated and all that sort of thing. Whereas the open source stuff was just open source. So
Yep.
their whole business marketing strategy was still intact. Everyone was allowed to get in and have a go. They're still making money, right? So
Yeah. In fact, so open innovation is kind of a broader variant of open source type stuff, and that's actually in Chapter 8, which we'll be talking about soon. So that's handy. We'll come back to that. Is there any? It's about time for us to start wrapping up this chapter because in a few minutes, at the top of the hour, we're going to be signing on for a conversation with Ilyan Ilyev, the CEO and founder of Cambridge IP. Now, first of all, a little bit of just in the interest of transparency and openness here. I am a technical advisor for this company, but in a very diminutive, smallish role. Whenever there's specific problems associated with oil and gas or energy types of issues, then they ask me for how does this work? Can you tell us about, you know, with the water and coal seam gas, what are the technologies that they use to treat that, and tell us about that space. So I pardon me, consult with them on that specific area. So that's my area of expertise is the technology, and I kind of speak that language and kind of translate to them, this is what that means. But I am not actually the reigning authority on the IP stuff. So they listen to my storytelling about the energy sector, and then on top of that, they kind of distill that into, and here's what we need to kind of turn that into a powerful IP story for our clients. So that's the, like I said, I had to give that public service announcement just to make sure that everyone understands that I do have a bit of skin in that game. He'll tell you more about what specifically this company does, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So let's pause there. Everyone can go have a bio break, and let's come back punctually, please, at the top of the hour, and we'll start talking to Eliane.